As we all know, the month of February is a shorter month. However, I think this is the most ambitious reading plan that I have crafted for myself in the month of February. These are not laid out in order, but I wanted to chat about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I thought there were 7, but there's 6 books here that I want to read. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I feel like I'm missing a book. Anyway, there are 6 books here that I want to read in the month of February, and I wanted to just chat about each one, as well as the book clubs that I am reading them for, or why I'm reading these books and how I chose them. So first, I wanted to chat about The 7 Moons of Maali, Almeida. This is really great. However, I started this in January and I decided to switch over to audiobook when I reached the halfway point of this, because this is one of those books that gets kind of difficult to read. I feel like I had to lock in more reading this than I did reading The Bluest Eye last month, and for different reasons. So we follow our main character, Maali Almeida, who is a war photographer in Colombo, Sri Lanka during the Sri Lankan Civil War in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And Maali Almeida is also a gambler and also a closeted gay person, and they wake up dead. And on the back, it's described as a celestial visa office. So immediately, we follow our main character, who is a ghost, and is told that they have 7 moons or 7 days to figure out what the heck happened to him. But the thing that also makes this such a fascinating read for me is the fact that it's written in second perspective. It's written in second perspective, but you're following Maali Almeida as a ghost, and there are moments where we are shot back in time, in the timeline, to past memories or past experiences. So we're following our main character around Sri Lanka to friends and families and peers and co-workers and detectives. We're following these detectives who were approached by Maali Almeida's mom, asking and begging for them to find Maali's body, because there's no body to be found. I think I'm maybe only 2 or 3 days into our main character being dead. So this is a very fascinating read, because I think it touches on the experiences of what it's like to be at the forefront of destruction, mass destruction and violence and trauma. To be a war photographer, you are seeing things that people are paying money to see, which is kind of the plot point. He has to figure out how he died, but also there are these boxes of photographs from the war that would change the course of the war if he were to pass along these photos so to the right people. And so what is it like being at the forefront of violence and destruction, but you're also far enough away to be not part of it and somewhat disconnected from it? And for Maali Almeida, that is through his photography or through his lens. Something I find fascinating with this story is that our main character is in this in-between, and in this in-between are also people that he had photographed or people he had known while he was on Earth, who have also died at the hands of the war. And so it isn't like this in-between seems very regional to me, where like all of these people who had died in Sri Lanka are also in this like Sri Lankan in-between, if that makes sense. Recently I watched the movie Eternity, that has one of the Olsen sisters in it, Elizabeth Olsen. And in that version of the in-between, it seems like there are people from all over the world who are in their most happiest selves. So that's one representation of this in-between that I've seen in media recently. But in The 7 Moons of Maali Almeida, you are seeing people in this in-between who died at the hands of the war. There are people with their heads cut off. There are people who are bloodied. So very tough read in that sense. And I am very eager to figure out what is happening to Maali Almeida. And I'm glad I switched over to audio halfway through, because I wanted to learn some of the pronunciation of names and words and things that I've been coming across. So that is The Seven Moons of Maali Almeida, and I'm listening to it on audio, so hopefully I can finish it pretty soon. Next, I am currently reading Persepolis 2, The Story of a Return, and this is part 2 to Persepolis, which is a graphic novel memoir, and this chronicles the author's experience. Well, the first one was about the author's experience growing up in Iran during the time of the Iranian Revolution in like the 70s and 80s. Towards the end, our author gets sent to, I believe, Austria. I forget. I believe Austria for education and for safety. And that first book kind of ended on a cliffhanger. Like, it almost looked like her mom passed out in the airport or something. Like, I thought this book was going to start up with that, but maybe it'll reference it soon because I am still in the very beginning of this book. And I think I mentioned this about the first graphic novel, is the power of reading and the power of education, and how those tools were really her way out into safety and out of Iran. I think in the second one, as we are told from the subtitle, The Story of a Return, she comes back to Iran. So I imagine, you know, lots of culture shock and reconnection with family. And also, I'm thinking of this question of what does home mean during a time of destruction and chaos, which is also evident in this story as well, which wasn't a coincidence that I'm reading these two together. I was just I feel like the themes of books and things that I read all kind of fall into place all at once. Next, I have This Is How You Lose the Time War. I have mentioned this several times on my TikTok, on my YouTube channel, and I am reading this for my Romance Readers book club that I host in my hometown. And you may be wondering, is this a romance book? From what I understand, this is a time travel sci-fi type book that is written in letters. It is written in letters between these two characters, and it's also a sapphic love story, which I love. So I'm very excited to get into this. I kind of have been intimidated to start. Something about this is making me nervous for my book club. And I feel like I have seen mixed reactions. There are people that I've met who love this book, and then there are people who don't love this book. Also, as I'm flipping through it, I see that there are thank God, there are discussion questions already in here. I feel like coming up with questions for a book club is always the hardest part, especially if I didn't like the book. If I didn't like the book, I will let my group know, and I try not to like participate. I'm more of a facilitator in that sort of scenario rather than a participant in the conversation, because I probably wouldn't have something good to say. So I'm really excited. It isn't that long, but something about it is just kind of making me a little bit nervous, but I'm excited. So next I have this graphic novel. It is heavy, but this is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. And you may be wondering, Karen, didn't you read that last year? Why, yes, I did read Parable of the Sower last year, and this isn't my first Octavia Butler novel. I think I started with Fledgling, Fledgling is not the best to start with if you're trying to get into Octavia Butler, especially if you don't know anything about Octavia Butler, just in general. So I would love to reread Fledgling, and I'm probably going to this year because I'm participating in the Wild Seedlings book club, and I will link that down below. It's just a Fable book club, and there is a Zoom call, I think the last Sunday of each month. But because I read Parable of the Sower last year, I was like, why don't I check out the graphic novel version? Because I can do that. And already the visuals are just so beautiful. And I like it when I have a face to the name or to the characters that I'm reading about. So anyway, this actually takes place in 2024, which is absolutely wild because, you know, my boyfriend and I were talking about how Los Angeles or like California is on fire like every year, but the 2025 fires were pretty significant. And I remember reading Parable of the Sower last year during the LA fires and reading the headlines of Almeida, California. And I was like reading Parable being like Almeida, California. So I love reminding myself and other people that Octavia Butler she's not a prophet. She was a student of science and of history and could recognize patterns to the point where it is reflected in her literature. So next, I also have Sula by Toni Morrison. I have mentioned this so many times that I'm participating in the Read Toni challenge for this year, hosted by Shay. I'll link everything down below as well. I don't know much about Toni, and I would love to learn more about Toni. I read The Bluest Eye last month, and there have been more and more people posting resources and articles and interviews and things like that of Toni Morrison's. And so I really want to take the opportunity to dive deeper into her work. And I'm really glad that this reading challenge kind of kickstarted that interest for me. I don't know much about any of her books. This one, I know it says 2 girls who grow up to become women, 2 friends who become something worse than enemies. So it looks like we are talking about female friendship in Sula, and I love anything that touches on female friendship. So I wonder, this takes place in Ohio. I wonder if it's like historical, like 1940s. Next, this is lowest on my priority list of reading for the month of February. I would love to get to this if possible, but that is Djinn Patrol on the Purple Line. My organization that I run in Greenville, South Carolina is called Greenville Readers Hub, and one of the book clubs that we provide for free is the Read Around the World book club, and essentially they read translated literature or literature from authors from other countries, and I believe this is from India. Let's see. In this transporting debut novel, 3 friends venture into the most dangerous corners of sprawling Indian city to find their missing classmate. Awesome. I am so excited. This sounds adventurous, but also potentially quite sad. So we'll see what that is going to be like. And yeah, I really don't know much about this. I'm not going into this knowing much about the story. So sorry if you were expecting a full synopsis, but again, this is just lowest on my priority list. If I can get to it in February, I will, because I would love to participate in the other book clubs that we have. We have Read Around the World. I host a romance readers book club. Brandon, he does Reader's Choice, where they just like pick and choose their own books. Our friend Jordan, she does the fantasy book club as well. So these are the 6 books that I am planning to read in February, and I am having a really great reading year so far and just really enjoying engaging with literature just a little bit more deeply this year. And just, I love seeing more and more people engage with reading a little bit more deeply as well. So my reading journal ecosystem and process of documenting things on paper has been going really well, and I probably will never go back to an app, because all I want to know is what I read, who it's by, and if I bought the book and saved money or not. Let me know what you're planning on reading in the month of February, and if you've read any of these books, I would love to hear your thoughts on them. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.